In my prior video, I shared about my experiment where I exclusively charged our 2015 Tesla Model S from our travel trailer solar panels. Click on the card above to go watch this video if you're interested. Because of this experiment, I didn't charge our Model S from our house most of the year. Our house has 9.98 kilowatts of grid-tied solar panels, and the way our net metering agreement with our electric utility provider works, all electricity that we push into the grid is credited to our account, and excess electricity rolls over month to month. That is until our March bill every year, where it resets to zero if there is any excess kilowatt hours on the account, and they don't compensate us for the excess electricity. Each month there is about a $10 fee, which is made up of taxes and fees, but I'm happy with this net metering agreement because the grid acts like a battery of unlimited size. Well, limited only by how much excess electricity we can push into the grid during the year. This agreement also motivates us to use all of our excess electricity before our March electric bill, otherwise we'll lose anything remaining. It's similar to how prepaid cell phone plans work, where you pay at the beginning of the month for a certain number of minutes, and if you don't use those minutes by the end of the month, then you just lose them. In any case, due to my experiment of charging our Model S exclusively most of the year from our travel trailer's solar panels, I very minimally charged it from our house all year. Plus, since we have free unlimited supercharging on our Model Y, we supercharge it most of the time, leading to a much larger net metering balance than usual this particular year. Here is a list of all of our prior net metering peaks, where this year it got to 4,550 kilowatt hours. Below our net metering peaks is how much electricity we've had to pay for over the same years. And clearly, how high the peak is does not dictate how much we're going to be short for electricity in March, because we vary our electricity consumption depending on how much excess electricity we have available. Over this time, our biggest demand levers are our electric cars, of which over the years we've had a Nissan Leaf, and now we have the Model S and the Model Y. When our net metering balance is trending low, we charge our cars elsewhere, such as free supercharging or free charging at my office where I work. When we have excess electricity, we charge the cars more at home, plus we have a freeze dryer we tend to use more or less depending on available energy. Basically, my goal these past 8 years has been to use up as much excess electricity as possible, but also paying for as little electricity as possible. Ideally, I would run the balance perfectly to zero, but the difficult variables of our utility provider not being consistent on which day they reset the balance, and also the random electricity usage of our household, makes for a nearly impossible target. However, as you can see, we've actually done pretty well with only paying $103 for electricity over those 8 years, and we've lost $7 worth of electricity over that same time from balance resets. This year, I looked at the all-time net metering balance high of 4,540 kilowatt hours, and I thought it might not be possible to use up all that excess energy over the winter. The prior winter, I had already purchased an electric space heater that I was experimenting with for heating our house in order to reduce our natural gas bill from using our furnace to heat the house. I decided this year I was going to start the winter using only the electric space heater. Then, if we ran out of electricity, I would switch to the natural gas furnace. Amazingly, we ended up never using the furnace all winter, so our heating bill was zero this winter. Our only other appliance that uses natural gas still is our 94% efficient water heater, which we installed in 2016. So that's the low-level yellow line of natural gas consumption showed on this graph. Our consumption does rise slightly in the winter, and that's due to the incoming water being a little colder. The two gray lines on the graph are comparison homes similar to ours according to our natural gas provider. Initially, I was not expecting the electric space heater to put out enough heat for our entire home, especially once the weather got really cold, below 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Surprisingly, it did put out enough heat that we never needed to switch to the furnace. Ideally, we'd have an air source heat pump AC compressor installed with which to heat the house far more efficiently than the measly 100% efficient space heater. However, when I looked up the pricing of having a heat pump installed, that $5,000 to $7,000 was clearly not worth the natural gas savings, especially compared to the $136 the space heater cost me. In the prior years, our natural gas consumption while heating our house with the furnace cost us $445 per year on average. But in a complete year of heating our house exclusively with our space heater, our natural gas cost was $192, which obviously is what our water heater consumed. Otherwise, this would be zero. If we still had an older, inefficient natural gas furnace, then these savings could be significantly more. As an aside, the high anomaly of 2023 is due to abnormally cold weather in January through April of 2023. Plus, we didn't use the electric space heater at all that year, either in the beginning nor the end of the year. A heat pump is about 3 times more efficient than this space heater we've been using, so it's not a perfect comparison, but using this cost reduction average, it would take 20 to 28 years to break even, whereas our space heater broke even in 6 months. When our air conditioner compressor fails at the end of its life, I will most certainly be replacing it with a heat pump unit. When that happens, we'll likely never heat our house with natural gas again. And since heat pumps are more efficient than basic resistive heating element space heaters, we'll have more electricity to use elsewhere. Also, someday when our water heater is at the end of its life, I'm planning to replace it with a heat pump water heater. Then we'll have zero natural gas consumption and I can shut off that service entirely. This space heater pulls 5,600 watts and claims the heating coverage is 600 square feet, but our house is apparently far more insulated than the typical intended use case because our home is about 2,100 square feet, or 3.6 times larger. Back when we first purchased our home, I added blown-in fiberglass insulation in the attic, increasing it from about R32 to R60. I also did some air sealing, caulking around doors and windows, and sealing up other air leaking sources, such as sealing off our clothing dryer exhaust pipe once we switched to a ventless heat pump dryer. Our house had an 80,000 BTU, 80% efficient furnace when we purchased it, and we replaced that furnace with a 60,000 BTU, 98% efficient furnace back in 2016, and that has been working great for us. This space heater I used consumes 5,600 watts, which converts to 19,108 BTUs per hour. However, the heating element is not on continuously. When we have the temperature dial maxed out, the heating element cycles on and off roughly, say, every 10 minutes or so. Because of that, the BTU output is closer to 9,500 BTUs per hour. The space heater only has 2 controls. One is the temperature dial and the other is a fan switch with either on continuously or auto, where the fan only turns on when the heating element is on. I found that the heater outputs more heat when the fan is set to stay on continuously. That makes sense to me because with the fan on, it cools down the heating element so that the thermostat will turn the heating element back on sooner, increasing the BTUs per hour. What I figured out through experience is when the outside ambient temperature got below around 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, I had to leave the heater on max continuously all night and all day to maintain a comfortable temperature, which worked just fine, meaning we weren't cold in the house. Normally with our furnace, I let the house cool down around 7 degrees overnight, then the furnace warms the house back up quickly once we get up in the morning. But in the case of the space heater being just barely enough BTUs to keep the house warm when it's really cold outside, it took many hours the next day to get it back warm again. I quickly learned to just leave it on overnight. We slept fine though because we keep our bedroom doors closed at night, so our bedrooms would cool down nicely while the rest of the house stayed warm. Now, regarding air circulation, the space heater is located in our upstairs hallway, which has 2 return air vents at floor level. Our furnace has a high-efficiency DC-powered motor, which is on low continuously, recirculating and filtering the air with a 5-inch pleated MERV 11 air filter. Because of this setup, the warmer air in our hallways is sucked into those return air ducts and distributed throughout the house. Since heat rises, it would be better in this case if the return air vents were at ceiling level, but oh well, it's not perfect. Our downstairs is roughly 10 degrees colder than the upstairs living room and kitchen area. My office, where I spend most of my days, is downstairs, so it's comfortable for me, and my wife and kids are upstairs most of the time, and they like it warmer up there. In the hallway directly where the space heater is located, it can get up to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's typically in the high 70s, and the kids love coming in from playing in the snow outside to stand in front of the hot blast of air. We have 2 additional 1000 watt space heaters we can use downstairs on occasion when desired. I would have experimented with moving the big space heater downstairs, but I don't have a 240 volt 30 amp receptacle downstairs with which to power it. Where it is upstairs, I have it plugged into a 30 amp 240 volt receptacle meant for our clothes dryer. We replaced our traditional resistive electric clothes dryer with a heat pump clothes dryer, which uses a tenth or less as much electricity as our prior dryer. So now we can use that energy for heating the house instead of drying clothes. Plus, there's no external vent on this dryer, unlike the old dryer, which sends the heated air outside the house, which creates a vacuum on the house, the air envelope, and that causes unconditioned air to ingress into the house. Note, I did cut off the NEMA 630 plug the space heater came with, and I rewired it for our outlet configuration. Obviously, the 30 amp circuit requirement and 240 volt requirements are the same, so it works just fine. This space heater only pulls 23 amps when the heating element is on, so it's not even maxing out the 30 amp circuit. The space heater fan noise is louder than our virtually silent furnace, but it hasn't been a problem for us. As we're heading into our third winter with this space heater, I'm doing the same thing, and I'll continue to use up excess electricity this way going forward. Our net metering balance going into the winter this year was 1,156 kilowatt hours less than last year. But considering how warm this winter has been so far through the end of 2025, we may end up similar to last year with our water heating being the only natural gas consumption. In conclusion, I recognize this is probably a pretty unique scenario that most people would not consider doing, but I imagine there are others out there with solar panels that may have excess electricity, and this is a perfectly viable method to do something useful with that excess electricity while simultaneously reducing or eliminating the cost of other energy sources. Will the $253 saved per year change our lives financially? No. But this is a good psychological discussion for a different video. Specifically, how do decisions like this, repeated over time, affect someone's wealth in the long term? I would argue that people who save where they can and do other smart things with that money will be far more well off financially than others who are ambivalent about small savings here and there. Plus, I just really don't like the idea of generating something useful like electricity, then figuratively throwing it away. Will I keep doing it in the future? Yes, I will where it's convenient. So thanks for joining me to review my experiment, and I will see you in the next video.